A senior NBA insider, Shams Charania, joins us now. Shams, what more can you tell us about the moves that the Nuggets made this morning?
The Denver Nuggets have done a full clean out. They have parted ways with both Michael Malone as head coach and general manager Calvin Booth. I'm told Josh Kroenke and Nuggets ownership informed Malone and Calvin Booth in a meeting today that both are being fired and let go. And this is stunning because we're just days away from the end of the regular season, days away from the start of the NBA playoffs. This is tied for the, really, for as far as a firing, this is tied for with Hugh B. Brown in 1980-81 season for the deepest into a regular season we've seen a coach get fired. Michael Malone is the winningest coach in Denver Nuggets franchise history. He led that organization to a 2023 NBA championship. And the Nuggets, from my understanding, just believed that they needed a full culture reset. There's been something of a Cold War brewing between both Malone and Booth over the last couple of years. And Malone is really the established coach in place there. And now the fact that he is out, it is stunning across the NBA.
Okay, so you say that it's stunning, which I feel like a lot of people are stunned by this firing this late in the season. As you mentioned, it's one of the latest firings that's happened in the NBA. Why are they doing it now?
I can't.
All right, I think we may have lost Shams. I don't think you can hear me. Shams, can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you guys. Sorry.
All right, no worries, Shams. I know you have plenty of things going on. We'll get back to you later. Oh, you're good. You're good. Okay, so Shams, why exactly are they doing this now?
I got you. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned it's stunning. This is obviously shocking to a lot of people in the NBA. Why are they deciding to do this now?
That's the biggest component to this, is you're days away from the NBA playoffs beginning. And my understanding is they felt kind of like the Grizzlies did with the departure of Taylor Jenkins, is igniting this team. They've lost 4 games in a row. They're now in the bottom half in the league in defensive rating. And so they felt like the signs were there that this season was not going to end well. And if you're going to make this decision at the end of the season to let go of Michael Malone and Calvin Booth and do a full reset, they're getting out ahead of what they felt they were going to do come the offseason. And between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth had really managed this team around young players the last couple years after winning that championship, saving money for ownership. They had saved, millions and millions of money in terms of tax over the last couple of years. And from Michael Malone's perspective, he's been trying to win a championship, building around win-now players with Nikola Jokic. So the fabric and what both sides had philosophically, there were some big differences there. And so instead of biding time, instead of maybe letting go of one guy and keeping the other, the Nuggets, Josh Kroenke, today let go of both.
Okay, so obviously the Nuggets, they're currently 4th in the Western Conference. They're going to want to make a playoff push, I would imagine. So what are their plans moving forward?
David Adelman will be the interim head coach. Right now, they don't have an acting general manager. They have an assistant GM, Tommy Bolsaitis. He will stay in that role. So now as we look forward into the playoffs, obviously their full focus will be trying to keep a playoff berth spot, not have to play in the play-in. We'll see if they'll be able to keep that. And then from there, there's full expectation. What we're going to see here is a full-on search from the president role as well as the head coaching role. And they had Tim Connolly there. He was really the architect of this Denver Nuggets team, drafted Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, traded for Aaron Gordon, drafted Michael Porter Jr. He departed to Minnesota a few years ago. Calvin Booth emerged as the general manager, and he made a couple of moves that helped propel this team to an NBA championship as well. And now, stunningly, so late in the season, both are out.
Yeah, I like that you keep using the word stunning because it is a very shocking move here this late in the season. Again, the Nuggets making a clean sweep. Shams Charania with the latest. We'll have Ramona Shelburne joining us later in the show to talk a little bit more about this. Thanks, Shams. With us now, Brian, we were all shocked when we heard the news. What was your reaction when you found out what was going on in Denver?
Yeah, it's definitely shocking. I think we should look at this in 3 different silos. The first one is Michael Malone. It is extremely shocking that you would move on from a coach this late in the season, no matter the circumstances, especially when he is the winningest coach in history of the team, led you to a championship 2 years ago. Even if there was difficulties within the locker room or difficulties with the front office, that he would not be allowed to have the playoffs to try to deal with it is very, very surprising. My discussions with people in the process so far, I have not identified anything that that they saw this coming either. So this seems like an ownership decision. The second thing is you look at the decision to move on from Calvin Booth. This, again, the timing of this was shocking. This was less surprising to the league, however, because Calvin Booth's contract is up after this season. They had negotiations throughout the course of the year, and they broke down. They were not going well. It was known within the league that there was a possibility that the Nuggets would move on from Calvin Booth, despite him helping construct a championship team. But we also didn't know how the postseason would play out, and it would have been possible that if his recent draft picks, which were really at the heart of frustrations between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, Booth wanted him to play his draft picks. This is a tale as old as time in the NBA, and if those young draft picks had played well in the playoffs, it's possible Booth would have been retained. But the Booth thing was not a surprise to the league. There were people thinking that job was going to be open for several months now. And then the third silo, which I think is probably going to be the most relevant, lasting one, and that is Nikola Jokic. You are now derailing and messing with the backbone of this superstar player's prime of his career. This is a guy who won a championship 2 years ago, and this team was put in a position where they could compete for multiple championships in a row. They have been affected by injuries. They've been affected by ownership electing not to re-sign veteran players and relying on new draft picks. And they've been, affected, obviously, now by these decisions late in the season. But you are dealing with a guy who is completely dedicated to your franchise, who has put himself in position to trust his prime years with your team, and now you have taken away the only coach he has ever known. And so they now are under some pressure, obviously, to try to, put together something for this season, but they now have got to replace the whole brain trust and not alienate Jokic. And he is probably the most committed superstar we've seen of this era to his organization, other than maybe Steph Curry. But you have really put yourself on the line, if you're the Kroenke family, Stan and his son Josh, who's the governor, to not mess this up after making these decisions now.
Yeah, the Jokic part, I think, is a very important piece, especially because they still have a regular season to finish and a playoff push, I would imagine. Do you essentially think that what they're doing now, these decisions that they've made, means that they're punting on the entire rest of the season?
Absolutely not. You would never punt with Jokic. To me, the biggest thing that they've got to handle, Jamal Murray's been out the last 5 games with a hamstring injury, and if Jamal Murray's not healthy, their chances at the postseason are severely impacted. That, I would have argued, was the most important thing for this team. By taking away a coach who has dozens and dozens of playoff games with Jokic and this team, dozens and dozens of playoff victories, many series victories, and taking him away from the sideline, that is not heightening your chance to win. Obviously, there have been times in recent days and weeks where Malone has had harsh words. He's criticized his players. That's who Michael Malone is. He's been that way for a decade, 20 years. I've known him for 20 years. He's always had a short temper and had called